All right. In this lesson, we're going to be taking a look at a couple of early theories of human development. We've got three big ones that we're going to take a look at. Actually, four if you count Dr. Freud's, just kind of throw that in there for the historical context of Erikson, which will come later. Psychologists love developmental theories. A lot of them are divided up into stages and seek to understand what kind of psychological, physical changes that the subjects are going through as they go through particular stages of life. And the two guys that you're going to see here, and then the more modern example that we'll get to at the end, both fit into kind of that period before psychology is going to become a science and take over. So this is going to be back. We're going to be looking in the 16 and 1700s for some of this thought. We're going to go way back to the Middle Ages, though, for kind of the first idea here. People believed in the Middle Ages in what was called Preformationism. And Preformationism was the idea that children came out basically as mini adults. That everything you were going to learn, be talented at, all the skills you were going to have, you came preloaded with those. It's almost like think about a computer. When you get a computer out of the box, you don't have to put Microsoft Word and the internet browser and things. Those things are already loaded onto there. If you look at the picture on the slide, that is actually a middle-aged picture of a sperm. You may be looking and saying, well, that's kind of weird. If you give it a closer look, that's a human being inside that sperm. And so the idea was that moms were incubators. That thing was just growing inside of them. That the sperm contained everything that the child needed, and that the human was going to need. Now, of course, today we don't believe that anymore. We'll talk a little bit more about the genetics and how different things are coming from mom and from dad. But basically, the idea in the Middle Ages was that children are mini adults. Uh, and so they didn't worry so much about educating kids as getting them a set of skills. And so you don't see schools as much as you see apprenticeships and children learning trades. But that will start to change as the Enlightenment rolls around. And so we're going to get two guys. The first guy here is John Locke. And John Locke, if you like U.S. history, is a really important guy. He was an English philosopher, and basically the founding fathers got the ideas for the Declaration of Independence from John Locke. He'd written this really famous pamphlet, Two Treatises on Government, where he defines this idea that a government gets its power from the people, which should sound very familiar. He also puts forth this idea that all people come out not with these preloaded ideas, but as blank slates. That they're just basically like an empty board in the front of a classroom, and what you learn is put on that board as you go through your life experiences. When Thomas Jefferson writes that all men are created equal in the Declaration of Independence, it's not so much the idea that everybody can run the same speed or jump the same height or have the same intellectual ability. What Thomas Jefferson was referring to was one of John Locke's ideas, the idea that everybody came out as a blank slate. And so your effort, your environment, your circumstances were able to kind of make up the person and who you were. And so John Locke really thought that the environment that a kid was going to be in was really important for their educational career. So John Locke School, he wanted the learning to be fun. A lot of instruction, he said, should take the form of game playing, things like that. That students should be what we call in education today scaffolded. Basically, that you learn something and then you use that to learn the next step, which probably sounds kind of familiar from like your math classes and things like that. He knew people were going to have difficulties with different subjects, so he said, let's just kind of ease everybody through, get a basic type of knowledge, but understand that some people are going to be talented in some areas and some people in others. Didn't believe in harsh punishment and really wanted to encourage kids to follow their natural curiosity. And so if you had gone to a John Locke school, it might not be one of those things where a teacher's planning lessons every day, things like that. The child is going to direct a little bit more of that. Now contrast him with this guy. His name is Jean-Jacques Rousseau. And Jean-Jacques Rousseau believed that the environment didn't have any effect on a child, that the child grew according to nature's plan. So he and Locke would have disagreed a little bit there. They both did believe that children should have a say in their own learning, in what they were going to learn. He has 4 stages that he said people went through, and these are still terms that we use today: infancy, childhood, late childhood, and then adolescence. Right? You guys would be kind of in that late adolescence, early adulthood stage. As you get ready to leave childhood, we owe those terms to Jean-Jacques Rousseau. Now, the interesting thing about this guy is he does all of this theorizing about how kids are going to develop. And he's got this Emile that he writes about and all these texts and things that he's doing. But he and his wife actually abandoned their 5 biological kids to, yeah, kind of an interesting fellow, right? But abandoned them, left them in orphanages. But he still was theorizing about how children would learn and grow. The interesting thing is, he said, "Hey, in a school that Rousseau would run, students didn't work for the approval of adults. You wouldn't get grades." Which some of you are saying, "Hey, that would be fantastic." Um, that your lessons should be child centered, stage appropriate. And so if you take these 2 guys and you kind of mix them up a little bit, you're going to get a modern example of this. And it's this lady. Her name's Maria Montessori. And probably you've heard of Montessori schools. There's one down on Charlestown Road in New Albany. Montessori schools are named after Maria Montessori. She was a doctor in Italy. And she kind of builds on the work of Rousseau. She said that there are certain times where kids are primed to learn certain things. And so um, she um, she tried to help kids design activities to be able to do that. Not my favorite, just because she didn't like fantasy. So if you don't have any time for Lord of the Rings or Narnia or Star Wars, I mean, what are we doing in education, right? But today we have these things called Montessori schools. And Montessori schools, you can go elementary all the way up to high school. Usually you have to start in elementary school to be able to go to these schools, because it is a different kind of technique and learning. She said the greatest sign of success for a teacher is to be able to say, the children are now working as if I did not exist. I don't know if I've ever gotten quite there as an educator. I've had kids act like I didn't exist. It's just the working part that probably was missing. This is a Montessori elementary classroom. You can see the little trays underneath there. Each one would have a specially designed activity, and you can buy these from Montessori educators, things like that, to help kids learn certain things. But the kids are doing it. The adults, when they are giving feedback, aren't telling a kid something's right or wrong. They're just trying to guide them through whatever principle they're supposed to be learning. I've got a really cool video I will link on this playlist after this one that shows kind of a half day in the life of a Montessori kid, and so check that out when you get the opportunity. But those are some early developmental theories.